Posture is neurology made visible. The moment someone walks into your office, you already know how their day's going. You can see it. The same's true when kids walk in the door from school. Good day, bad day, it's immediately visible and recognizable. Why? Because our brains are wired to pick up visual clues. You don't have to be a trained chiropractor to experience this. We all do it. Everybody's heard that body language can communicate more than our actual words. So, what is it that we're actually picking up on? It's actually the central integrative state of the nervous system. There's many tools that we can use to measure the output of the nervous system. Things like muscle strength, range of motion, orthopedic tests, standard neurological tests, muscle testing, palpation, tone, spasm, and pain. But one of the simplest, clearest indicators may be quite literally staring us in the face. And as a profession, we're missing key factors in the way we think about it, analyze, and attempt to improve posture. We're treating it as a motor problem, a mechanics problem. We're attempting to treat the output rather than focusing on the input. But what we're really dealing with is a sensory issue. A few weeks ago, we explored the BUOI paradigm, the idea that biomechanics flows from the ground up, from the bottom outside in. If you missed it, there's a link in the comments below. Today, I want to give you a different way to think about it, and a clinical tool that you can apply to see immediate results. As we previously discussed, our nervous system is a sensory-first system. Every motor output flows from a sensory input. Now that's true, but it's a massive oversimplification. A more accurate description would be that every motor output flows from the total sum of all sensory inputs delivered to the central nervous system in that millisecond. So here's how that actually works. Sensory inputs include our 5 special senses: vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. But these collectively make up only a small portion of the total input flowing into our CNS at any given moment. The vast majority of that input comes from the sensory nerve endings in our muscles, our muscle spindle cells. This input is then transmitted through the 86 billion neurons of the CNS, with each one of them connected to an average of 7,000 other neurons. The brain is this vast, almost infinitely complex processing center that receives this incredible inflow of sensory data and produces a motor output in response. One of my mentors, Dr. Simon King, founder of the clinical discipline of Afferentology, puts it like this. He says, the afferent input paradigm challenges the notion that the brain controls the body. Our every thought and action starts life as an incoming nerve signal. Afferent input is the raw material that creates all brain and nervous system function. And the majority of that input is coming from our muscles. Muscle spindles constantly fire into the spinal cord, activating reflex loops that control tone in our agonist and antagonist muscle pairs. This is what creates our resting tone, our posture, and our movement potential. This input also then fires up to the brain, which modulates the output. 90% of our movement and tone is not conscious, it's reflexive. That's why trying to improve posture through conscious efforts, like reminding someone to stand up straight, are never effective. As soon as we stop paying attention, our unconscious reflexive state takes over again. This is also the reason why body language gives us away. We'll get more into how that works and the research around it next week. This flood of sensory data from our muscle spindles is part of a two-way conversation. Our motor neurons talk back, the sum total of output arising from all that input. And here's where it gets just mind-bogglingly complex. So at rest, each motor neuron is firing to the muscle fiber that it innervates 50 times per second, and that's when it's at rest. A full contraction, such as during a heavy deadlift, that can ramp up to 500 times per second. A single motor neuron supplies one or maybe more muscle fibers, so it takes thousands of motor neurons acting together to bring a muscle to full contraction. But what's really fascinating about motor neurons isn't their output, it's their input. Each motor neuron receives up to 10,000 inputs. That's messages from other nerves. These messages bring input from other muscles, skin, tendons, ligaments, bones, and from the brain. The motor nerve won't fire, so it won't send a message telling the muscles to contract until it accumulates enough inputs. A motor nerve needs to reach about 70 millivolts to fire, and each input only supplies about 1/2 to 1 millivolt, so no single input can create an output. And as if that wasn't complex enough already, Not all inputs are facilitatory. Some are inhibitory. So it's not until the cumulative total of all inputs, both facilitatory and inhibitory, reach 70 millivolts that the nerve will fire to the muscle. And this whole thing is happening 50 times a second, even when the muscle's at rest, across millions of neurons. It's staggeringly complex. No wonder we can't consciously maintain our posture. It's just logistically impossible. And this massively skewed ratio, 10,000 sensory inputs for each single motor neuron, tells us just how important that incoming sensory information is to our nervous system. The fact that every motor neuron receives such a massive inputs for every output gives some clues to the complexity of the task of controlled movement. As Dr. King puts it, muscles are the beginning and ending of the nervous system. We are an outside-in organism. We have to adapt to our environment. The whole reason that we have proprioception is to control movement. So here's the next key part. Not all muscles are created equal when it comes to sensory input. Some are spindle-dense and some are relatively spindle-light. It depends on the amount of fine precision control that the brain requires of that muscle. The most spindle-dense area of the body outside of the head and upper neck is the plantar surface of the feet. And of course that makes sense, right? How can we stand upright or walk, balance or run if we can't feel the ground? When we look at it in this context, the stimulation versus support paradigm doesn't just make sense. It becomes unavoidably logical. We know the modern environment is dramatically reducing the input to our feet through neurologically deadening shoes and flat surfaces, effectively blindfolding our brain. We know traditional orthotics and arch supports further reduce the incoming signal. And we know that each motor neuron has up to 10,000 inputs and will only fire once it receives a sufficient total of stimulatory rather than inhibitory inputs. So when we blind the input from our feet, we directly reduce the motor output flowing to our muscles. No wonder almost everybody has weak, dysfunctional feet. And not only that, slumped, inefficient, dysfunctional posture as a result. We looked deeply into how foot function creates posture, particularly forward head posture in a previous episode. Chuck a link in the comments below. This isn't just my idea, this isn't speculation. It's simple textbook physiology. Yet it's going largely unaddressed. This is the glaring hole in how most physical medicine, including most chiropractors, are attempting to address posture. Adjustments are great, exercises are great, better ergonomics can be helpful. But all of these are missing out on addressing this most fundamental input, the ground that we walk and stand on every day. This is why many of them create short-term benefits, but often fail to create consistent, lasting change. The patient is literally actively working against these interventions every single time they stand or take a step. And those postural changes have consequences, probably more than most of us realize. I've been really digging through the research on this, and next week I plan to share a whole bunch of it with you. But for today, I wanted to give you something practical to implement, something that's fast, effective, and that your patients can feel and see immediately. I call it the 5-minute foot reset. It's a clinical protocol that immediately changes the way the body relates to the ground and the way it reacts to gravity as a result. I'm currently refining it to make sure it includes only the most reproducible and reliable techniques. Truth is, it's easy to create a 25-minute protocol. Much more challenging to consistently produce the same results in 5 minutes. The end result will be a simple, focused, one-page reference card that you can refer to daily in practice. If you're interested in that, please comment protocol on this video and I'll send it through as soon as it's ready. What it gives you is a fast, simple tool to create an immediate wow experience for your patients. They'll feel the difference as soon as they stand up off your adjusting table. You'll be able to see the difference, and they're going to feel it as they walk out of your office. Not only that, their friends and family are going to see it too. But here's the thing. What this addresses is the motor output. It's a series of quick corrections for the dysfunctional, repetitively strained musculoskeletal elements that dictate that patient's motor response to the ground. But remember the ratio, 10,000 sensory inputs per single motor neuron. No correction's going to fix that because it's not a problem with their feet. It's a problem with their environment. There's no adjustment that you can do that fixes that issue on a lasting basis. So this is where betterbalanceorthotics come in. They're a sensory therapy that enhances motor outcomes. If your patient's not regularly wearing them, then you're going to find yourself having to repeat the corrections. and you're going to watch their postural problems return. Usually not as bad, but if you give it long enough. So that's it for this week. Enjoy playing around and resetting your patient's feet and watching their surprise when they step off the table. Many of them are pretty blown away. If you really want to wow them, take a quick before and after photo and show it to them. With or without the photo, this naturally opens up the conversation about how their brain is constantly setting up their posture based on the input it's getting from their feet. They'll get it because they can actually feel it. One last thing, I'm just creating this as a resource for our current docs, but it's also an outreach for the majority of our profession who don't even know that the stimulation versus support paradigm exists. There's so many great docs out there who are totally missing this key piece of the clinical puzzle, and it's sabotaging their results. They deserve better, and so do their patients. I'm providing a link where they can download the clinical reference card and subscribe to the footbrainconnection. If you could find the time to just share this with 2 to 3 docs who really need it, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Remember, if you want the clinical reference card, just comment protocol below. All right, have an awesome week.